And the first one is rejection or a counteroffer. A counteroffer is also a rejection. So in this case, what we're looking at is an offeree rejecting or offering back a different dollar figure. So hide and wrench is a great example of that. So what happened in hide and wrench? Well, in hide and wrench we had wrench offering, so wrench offers to sell their property to H for £1,200. And what happens? After that, H says no. So that's what happened. So step one, H offers to sell. W offers to sell. Wrench offers to sell to Hyde. Hyde says no. The third thing that occurs is wrench offers to sell again to H, drops the price and says, I'll sell it to you for 1,000. The four things that happen, and this is very interesting, is H says, you know what, how about I buy it for £950? Okay, so that's the fourth thing that happens. H says, no, but I'll pay you £950, I won't pay you the 1,000, I'll pay you £950. The fifth thing that happens is that W says no, and then H says, well, I'll buy for that 1,000. So what you can see here is that now H is saying, well, look, you offered to sell it to me for this £1,000, and I'm going to accept that. So we have a contract. And wrench at this point says, no, you know, I don't want that contract. Perhaps he found another buyer at more than £1,000. So this is the issue before the court. What's going on here? And what did the court actually find? What they said is, see this one here? This is called a counteroffer. So this counteroffer, when wrench says, I'll offer to sell it to you for £1,000, H, by saying, well, I tell you what, I'll buy it for £950, the court says, at this point here, there's a rejection of the offer. A counteroffer equals a rejection, and therefore the offer's off the table. So this £950 is now an offer to buy. So we've switched from W offering to sell to H offering to buy. And at this point, wrench says no, and that this is not a valid acceptance because there's no offer on the table anymore. That offer has been rejected. And so what we can clearly see here is that a counteroffer is actually a rejection. So that's the kind of difficult situation you can be in sometimes around contract when there's argy-bargy around negotiations. At what point is the contract actually in place? The second thing that can occur is what's called the revocation of an offer. So rather than it being a rejection of the offer by the offeree, this involves the offeror taking the deal off the table. What's critical to understand about this is that it can only happen if the offer hasn't been accepted. And this again can get a little bit tricky. Let's have a look at a case or two. So the next case we're going to look at is Dickinson and Dodds. And in this case, we have Mr. Dodds, and he offers to sell some property to Mr. Dickinson. So the offer is on the table, and the offer says, I will leave the offer open till 9 a.m. Friday. So that's the first piece of the facts that we know. Dodds offers to sell to Dickinson, and the offer will remain open till 9 a.m. Friday. So the second thing that occurs is then Dickinson hears that Dodds has sold the properties. He hears that Dodds has actually sold them, sold the properties to a third party, so one that no one else knew. So of course, so Dickinson gets a bit worried about this and says, actually, you know what, I actually want to buy it. So then Dickinson, the third thing Dickinson then does is Dickinson says, okay, Dickinson goes back to Dodds and says, I'll buy. And he does this before 9 a.m. Friday. So you can see the offer, and the offer was said to be on the table till 9 a.m. Friday. We have an acceptance that occurs before 9 a.m. Friday. So the question that we have here is there a contract? What do you think? Is there a contract? What did the court say? No, there isn't a contract. Dickinson heard from a reliable third party that Dodds had sold the property. What does that mean? Well, that's a revocation. No, Dodds, by selling, had revoked the offer. Note also that Dickinson knew this before the acceptance. And so if revocation is communicated to the offeree, then the offer is terminated. Even, as the case of Dickinson and Dodds shows, if that communication comes about from hearing about it from someone else. Let's contrast that case with this one from Byrne and Leon Van Tienhoven and Co. to see a little bit of difference. So VT is in Cardiff in the UK and Byrne is in New York. So the fact situation is VT on the 1st of October posts an offer over to Byrne, which Byrne receives on the 11th of October. So you get that? So the offer is made, put in the envelope on the 1st of October, it arrives over in New York on the 11th of October. Once they receive that, Byrne immediately telegraphs an acceptance and posts a confirmation of the acceptance on the 15th of October. Well, meanwhile, back in Cardiff, VT, Van Tienhoven, has got a different idea and says, you know what, don't want to sell it to you. I want to withdraw the offer. I want to revoke the offer. And they post that on the 8th of October and it arrives on the 20th of October. So can you see the problem here? We've got to work out, when did the contract actually occur? The offer was made on the 1st. A revocation was posted on the 8th. It was accepted on the 11th. Then the acceptance was posted on the 15th after being telegraphed, but the revocation didn't arrive until the 20th. Do we actually have a contract here, or do we not? And what did the courts actually find in this case? Well, I won't go into the details, but you must understand that there's something called the Postal Acceptance Rule. And what it says is that once post is contemplated as a method of acceptance, so if you think someone might post you an acceptance, then when they put it in the post box at their end, so when they put it in the post box at their end, we actually have acceptance. So we could argue the acceptance actually occurs on the 11th of October, okay? But it definitely occurs on the 15th. It probably occurs on the 11th, so acceptance occurs here. The issue is, what's the status of the offer given the withdrawal was on the 8th? And the difference in Byrne and Leon Van Tienhoven from Hyde and Wrench is the communication. It doesn't arrive until the 20th. So from Byrne's perspective, the offer is still on the table at both the 11th and the 15th, which means that in this case, the acceptance is valid. The acceptance here is valid, and we actually have a contract. We have a contract because the revocation wasn't communicated in time to beat the acceptance. And that was a very different situation from what we saw in Dickinson and Dodds. Once again, if the offer's not already been accepted or rejected, the offeror can revoke the offer. Timing is important. The offeror can only revoke the offer if it hasn't been accepted. If acceptance has occurred, then the offer can't actually be revoked. They can revoke the offer even within that particular period that they've said that they'll kept it open. Remember that Dickinson and Dodds? The only time you can't do that is if the offeree has paid an amount in order to keep that time period open. What you have there is something that's called an option, and they're still commonly used. And so really what you have are two agreements. And the first agreement is the agreement to keep the offer open, and you pay for that option. If you pay for it, then the person must keep that offer open for that period of time. That's the exception to that ability to revoke an offer. The final thing that we need to look at is lapse of time. So if an offer isn't accepted, rejected, or revoked within a reasonable period of time, it will actually lapse. So if you offer to sell your car to someone and you say it remains open until midnight on Friday, B can't accept that until Saturday morning. The offer lapses at midnight. You can specify the period of time at which lapse will occur, which is what's happened in that example of the car. But if you don't specify a time, then the court will look at the facts and it will vary on the circumstances of the case. If something's perishable, it'll be a shorter period of time. If something's less perishable, it'll be a longer period of time, etc. But really, it won't stay open forever. And so the courts are going to say, well, what's a reasonable period of time you'd expect the offer to remain on the table? But eventually, the offer will lapse. So you can't come back in 25 years and say, I'll accept your offer. How long it will remain open, again, depends upon the circumstances of the case.